Can't help how much I love iced beverages. And we're live on the Gamification Revolution, everybody. Hello, I'm your host, Gabe Zickerman, and I'm coming to you from incredibly hot, like the surface of the sun, Las Vegas, hence why I'm drinking a mm, delicious iced coffee. And I'm joined today by my guest, Guido Helmerhorst. Hi, Guido, how are
Hi.
you?
Hi, everybody. I'm good, thank
So,
you.
so glad to have you back from the Netherlands. Not back from the dead, back from the Netherlands for a second retry at this chat about all the cool stuff that you have going on. And hello, everybody. Welcome all of our regulars who we see again. Hello, David, and the rest of you. Marty, so nice to see you again. And for those of you who are new, welcome to the Gamification Revolution web show. We're here approximately once every couple of weeks, Thursdays around 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific, talking about engagement and so on and so forth. If you've never been here before, you'll need to log in with one of your social media contacts here on the Spreecast platform, and then you can ask us questions, and you can post those questions right there below where you see it. You can even come on camera if you have questions for Guido and I, and we'll get to answering your questions over this time period. If you're listening to the show via the podcast now available on iTunes, you can download it and subscribe. Well, then welcome. Come join us live some point, and would be lovely to hear from you. Okay, so Peter, you work for KLM in the Netherlands, as you know, and you worked on this really pretty cool project, this KLM's Next Top Model project. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure thing. Actually, where to start? The funny thing is that because I've tried to explain it several occasions, and I think the thing with gamification kind of projects, it's really hard to describe basically because as KLM's Next Top model, it happened in reality. I work at the IT of KLM. It is about 400 people in one building. We had a new building, so with the whole, I don't know how you call it in English, but the whole flexible working, and
Uh-huh.
not everybody has their own desk, etc., etc. And that coming from a really restricted and historic office um, meant that we had kind of a new way to work together. So and one thing that when I started, it was really in the beginning of when I started with gamification. I went to one of our VPs and said, "Okay, I want to do something." And he said, basically, the short story is, "Okay, fine, let's do it. I have a 3D printer in my car. I don't know what to do with it. Go use it." So we ended
Okay.
up with three objectives. Cooperation, so better cooperate with one each other because we are a really siloed organization. Learn a new technology, in this way the 3D printer, or in this case, and kind of more the business and IT cooperation, because as we are a large organization, the business is really far from our IT organization. And then we kind of created a story, the future of aviation. We created a whole set on media, on kind of how to onboard people into this experience. We said we wanted to create a meaningful experience. Um, and we created 5 missions. We created a way to get people on board. We used a kind of a contest. So people thought they were entering a contest, but in reality, they entered the experience. So
Okay.
they got strange emails from this woman called Miss Burke. We created as a personage. We had her on film, and she invited people really at the beginning to say, "Are you up for a challenge?" And then people reacted. Some people liked it, some people didn't. And then we ended up creating teams, doing missions, and then also real, in reality, get-togethers, kind of mystery guests, etc., etc.
So let me ask you a question. A lot of things come up, kind of, I think, from the from your sort of detailed, those details. I know I want to talk about the details, and I know that folks watching us who are practitioners often of gamification stuff will definitely
Yeah,
want to know some of the details of the things
yeah.
that you designed. So why did you decide to go with this Miss Burke, kind of a little bit of mystery onboarding instead of just being like, "Hey guys, we're gonna play this game together"? What was the
Yeah.
rationale for that?
Well, I think the thing we struggled with is that you can if you think about the story, because storytelling is in my opinion a very important part of the whole gamification kind of disciplines into the blend. We thought, okay, we can do a kind of a medieval castle, whatever story, but then it's too far from the reality. And we have, our target audience were IT people. Yeah, so they were just, and they were, our average age is about 45 or something. So we had a certain target group we had to address. So we said, okay, so the future of aviation is something that people could relate to, but was also far enough from the real work. So there was kind of a balance we tried to find in, and that's why we created a whole kind of new, invented a personage, so they could relate to and was far enough, but also had to do with stuff they it was close to the heart, basically aviation. Still
So
on? Still back?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so I get that it's the right subject, but so did you come up with that? Did you come up with that whole Ms. Burke onboarding thing? Was that like kind of your baby? Did you consider other ideas as well for how you were
Yeah,
gonna?
yeah, for sure. We had a lot of, we considered, for example, building an airport,
Okay,
or
like a
so
Farmville style game,
maybe a
or
little bit more. Sorry?
was it like a Farmville style game idea at one point where you were gonna like have people build their own airport and run it in the
Yeah,
simulation?
yeah, and built their own runway and stuff. But the basic idea of Miss Burke was she was a director of a company that was asked by your company, in this case KLM,
Mhm.
to think about the future of aviation, and therefore she wanted to have a group of top thinkers and doers and inventors and creative people to think about that and to help her create that story. So that was how it was played out eventually.
What are some of the missions that you sent people on? You talked about 5 missions. What are some of those?
Yeah. So what we said is, we said, what does the passenger or the customer of the future look like? Describe them, and we asked them not to use the or to be creative in the means to show us. So the missions were kind of high level, but were kind of also complex. The other one is think about of course, the airplane of the future. And so they had to kind of design it, but also print the airline of the future. And
Oh,
that's where the 3D printing technology came in.
got it.
And the fourth was, give us the business case, or present, pitch it. What is the business case? What is more the business parameters you're looking at? And the fifth was more concerned about the teaming and how that came along.
So what did you actually discover about the airline of the future? Like what was the result? I mean, for stuff that you can share with us, what was the result of this particular gamified
Um,
training?
it was, well, there were numerous results. Of course, on content wise, there was the result on, okay, some people thought we would be out of business, and there were just virtual reality, people going on virtual holidays and virtual business trips and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so that was one. The other one thought more on more individual based. So they had designed really little aircrafts that would pick you up at a certain place near your home, then fly to, for example, Schiphol, and then fly further around the globe.
Mhm.
Others were more on really kind of more space rocket, really fast kind of stuff. So there was more on the content. But I think what was an kind of unexpected but really beautiful outcome was that we got to see the hidden talents of the people joining, because we got really creative ways of showing. Yeah, so for example, Crazy, I think most people know, in KLM we use a lot of PowerPoint and a lot of standard template-minded, KLM branded PowerPoints. But now people got creative, and they got their kids involved. They actually played kind of a play to show what they meant. They handed in movies. So there was a really broad expression of the way they showed, us, what they wanted or what they wanted to show.
Right. And I think it's interesting because a lot of times the IT department in particular is like such a service organization where, you're not often kind of called upon to, necessarily to work on strategy, but rather to serve the kind of
Exactly.
serve the rest of the business. So
Yeah.
is that so do you think that this allows you to, and how does it allow you to talk differently about what the organization kind of can do? And I know you don't run the organization, but I'm just curious from your standpoint.
Well, I think it's exactly as you said. I always call it like we are the factory. Yeah, we are asked to produce something, and then we produce, and that's where we're good at. What we are not really good at being in a co-creation kind of process. So in order for people let me, a small example. There were two guys that were really, the IT kind of guys. But they were teamed up eventually with somebody who was more on the strategic part. And then for the 3D technologies, she said, okay, let's go to the engineering and maintenance department, 10 kilometers down the road. They were like, can you do that? Can we actually go there? And she was like, sure. So they went there. And, a whole new world opened up for them. And should I ask them in a different way? They were probably said, no, I'm good. But in this context, they were kind of triggered for their mission and they wanted to find out. And somebody asked them, so it was easier. And I think that was really important in the process of becoming a more co-creation partner for the business instead of the factory.
How how important do you think the actual gameplay elements were in doing this? Because think about it, you could have just called everyone into a room together, right?
Yeah.
And said, okay, you
Yeah.
guys, let's have an ideation session. Let's just talk about the future of the aviation business or KLM. What did you learn, or why did you go through the effort of gamifying this process instead of just doing the more let's say I hate to say boring, but more straightforward, let's say, approach?
Yeah. I think eventually, it appeals to different people. So for sure, you have a group that you can go get into a cool office and say, okay, let's ideate and let's go for it. But I think we eventually ended up, more or less coincident, I don't know, but we ended up with a group that was, if you would do that, they were kind of, they're not used to that. So they had to kind of be carried and pampered and kind of triggered in a different way. So, for example, on the cooperation, because that was one of our objectives to kind of break the silos. Actually, I had one guy I had in my previous team joined, and in my previous team, I had various discussions with him on cooperation. And his statement was, okay, I work here 25 years. I've been to a dozen courses on cooperation. I can work with somebody together. I'm not the problem. Well, he also had a problem, in my opinion, anyway. Yeah, but in this whole KLM's Next top model, he was a top performer. And he was kind of doing new stuff and working in new ways together with the people. Yeah, so for me it was a really good, and I think that's in hindsight, but the goal of the game, and so save the princess, can be different than the goal underlying the objectives. And I think that's a really powerful concept, because then you can kind of seduce but get people into a different flow of doing something that they, well, might upfront be against.
Right, right, exactly. So can you talk a little bit more about the 3D printing piece of this? Because I know that's actually really kind of cool and interesting. And I know you said your boss would just kind of, it was a throwaway idea about 3D printing, but can you say a little bit more about how that played into the game?
No, but it kind of started with that. So because he said, because they were thinking about, okay, we have to kind of learn or teach or excite people about learning new technologies in a way that not to be more upfront. Yeah. So what happens now is that the business discovers, for example, 3D technology. They play around and then they come to IT and say, okay, let's make this. And then we're like, okay, 3D printing, what the hell is that? So we have to learn and be quick, and and then the business thinks, okay, these guys are just sleeping. Yeah, so it was already kind of the plan, but he didn't really know how to. So we really started with the 3D printing or the 3D printer, and then said, okay, what can we do with it? How can we motivate people to learn how to 3D print, how to use it, and really basic. Okay, when it breaks down, what to do, how do we use SketchUp, how do we use all these other programs we're not used to.
Got it. So a little bit of kind of advanced training in that area.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you get interested in the subject of gamification and this business process in the first place?
Um, well, in a not too long well, how do you say it, in my past, I studied architecture at the University of Delft, or of Technology in Delft. And I think for me that kind of binded together, because when I look at gamification, for me it's about combining various disciplines. Yeah, so I always say, okay, you have five disciplines. You have storytelling, you have the business objectives, you have usability, technology, and human behavior. And you have to balance all those and probably more, but those are kind of my five I go with. And for me, that's really interesting, because you can kind of combine or mix or how do you say it, enhance or get together the user objectives, the personal objectives, with the business objectives. And for me, that's a really powerful thing, and I think that's why I kind of grew into it, and I found it interesting, and say, okay, so this is a way to kind of tap into motivation and get more fun into the game, but also connect it to, well, real life and business objectives.
So, when you said you studied architecture, did you study architecture, like building architecture, or software architecture?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You kind of the first 3 years are kind of the way to become an architect. But eventually, I grew more into the urban development part and the process management part. So more the management part I ended up with. But yes.
Did you did you play any games during that time, or do you play games now? And if so, what do you play?
Well, actually, at this time I don't have time to play games. At least I don't, because I have two kids, and life is just moving too fast.
And you have a really
But
good hair that you have to manage and style. So I'm sure that takes you a while every day.
yes, for sure. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I won't comment on that. But and I enjoy the games playing with my children, of course. Um, And I used to really like the racing games. I was more of the trying to get really good at the circuit. And that's what cost me some few hours of my study time.
So now that you guys have kind of done this in KLM, and I know that the organization it's a little bit public, right? Like it's not like you guys are not hiding this from the world. You're comfortable talking about it with the world. Seems like
Yeah.
KLM is proud of it. In fact, we just put a link up to the Vimeo link, which is now in the chat, so people can kind of see a little sort of intro video of it. So what's happening inside the organization around gamification? First of all, what other kinds of things are you looking at? And secondly, how is it affecting your career and your efforts at KLM specifically?
Well, maybe to start with the latter, kind of the KLM Next Top model kind of jump-started my belief also in gamification and the added value. So that got me started to talking about it. And the good thing about Next Top model is that it was kind of a guerrilla tactic. So it was a really small group that did it. Yeah. So when we created all the smoke and the different kind of little spikes out there, nobody knew about it. And they expected me to do something with it, but they didn't really know for sure. So we kind of, only our CIO and one of his VPs knew about it and were in the game, so to speak. But
And was
yeah,
that
and then
deliberate?
after that,
Wait, was that deliberate, by the way? Was it deliberate that you didn't tell a whole bunch of people at the beginning, or was that just
yeah,
kind of how it
yeah,
worked
yeah,
out?
yeah, yeah. No, that was really deliberate because because we were really kind of how do you say, excited, or wanted really to go for the idea of onboarding. Yeah, so we didn't want to, and of course it was an experiment. So if it went wrong, we would be able to kind of patch here, patch there, and to be able to kind of maneuver. So it enhanced our flexibility. At least that's what we thought.
Got it.
But of course you had to have backup. Yeah, I spent some money, so I had to have some backing from our CIO. So it was good, and he was excited about it. And then after that, I said, okay, this also in the process of IT being more a co-creation or being more a partner for the business, we said, okay, this gamification thing can be something that we will see in the future come as a question to IT. So better now get on that train. And that was kind of my, luck in a way. And I started that and basically created my own job. So now I'm doing all kind of experiments, trying to get kind of gamification into the organization.
So are you mostly focused on gamification specifically like cross-functionally, or are you focused on kind of or more like kind of employee onboarding and engagement, and gamification happens to be the tool that you are using?
Yeah, so it's more internally focused, that to begin with. That's so more for the employees and stuff like that. But what I came to realize, and I think I said it the last time, for me gamification was my Trojan horse and still is. Into discussions and topics and tables where more business people are. Yeah, so where they talk about, okay, can we engage or better our communication with our employees, or how can we get onboarding for new employees better into the organization, or how can we improve our sales organization, or stuff like that. So basic conversations where IT is never invited. But now, from a gamification perspective, and they kind of see, okay, this is interesting, I get invited. And then what you see is that it's often, especially in the beginning, it's more about multidisciplinary thinking and a kind of design thinking process started. And then it could grow into gamification solution. But sometimes it's already a big change to do a workshop, invite everybody, and think about the problem. Yeah, instead of, okay, a small group is thinking about a problem, and then we invite communication department or lady to think about the communication, and then so really waterfall or sequential way of doing. So I think that's more, and some parts I do the gamification. So I recently built an onboarding app for new employees coming into IT now specifically, to learn about their new colleagues, to learn about the building they're entering, to learn about the security rules, to we have a KLM pass you have to collect, but you have to collect it at some, well, we call it Schiphol Oost, but some place at Schiphol. No, and when you come into the organization, you don't know where it is. So we kind of broke that kind of processes down into, well, more challenges, so to speak.
That's very interesting. So now
Does it
how?
answer?
Yeah, sure. And I want to hear more about this new onboarding project too. Once you have some data maybe to share about it, would be great to have you back and have you tell us more about how that's going at the company.
Yeah, we're doing now the pilot. So we are, because there are not a whole lot of bunch coming in KLM because of the current situation, but we are collecting now data. So in a month or two, I should have more data on, and we are actually doing A/B testing. So a group is getting the app and a group is not getting the app, and then see what happens.
I love the scientific method. But so for the other question, as far as the organization is concerned, so now that you've done this project and it's gotten some attention and it seems to be popular, how has that shifted attitudes inside the organization, and what do you now find, if any changes have occurred? KLM is a company that's been around for a long time. It's one of the first airlines in the world. It's not it's not a new
95 years
company.
ago.
Yeah, right. It's not a new company. So how, and in a difficult market where there's a lot of pressure all the time to succeed, how do you feel like gamification now is perceived inside the organization? What can you say about the broader organization as a whole?
I think I spent the last year talking to a lot of people. So in that way, and mostly in trying as a kind of a salesperson to get experiments off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, the Trojan horse works. I get at the table and people are interested, either by the sound of it, either by seeing their children play and get totally hooked to it. So there is something that triggers. But, it takes more. It takes guts. It takes, nuts to go for it and to kind of do things another way. Because if you do, or you want to do gamification solution or whatever, the old way of working is not working.
Right.
So it starts with, okay, so you want to do it? Okay, so let's invite various disciplines around the table to think about the problem. And then the problem starts because we're not used in that way of working. And then the whole, for example, the how do you call it? The hour registration. Yeah, so if I want to invite somebody from another division to take part in this project because it's far better to have different perspectives into, it's really difficult because they say, no, but I have stuff to do and my manager says this. So you kind of walk, at the walls, or how do you call it, of the organization. And that's well, interesting, but also, and I think that's the hard work. So it has kind of changed and aided the whole process of organizing ourselves differently, because also our agile movement is going on. So there are various kind of processes going on. So it's helping us, but still it's really small. It's really small.
Um, Sort of, Sasha asked the kind of corollary question here, which is about overcoming resistance. And I guess my one kind of question for you, because you've sort of talked to that, is if you had to project for yourself forward in terms of KLM internally in the organization and its use of gamification, these advanced techniques over the next kind of few years, what do you think we might see? What do you hope we might see?
Um, I think, but I think the now we're of course we're talking really about gamification, but I think that's also a tool, and it's also and I think it's a powerful tool, and it's a powerful mindset, and it's a powerful perspective. Um, but I think it will kind of be faded away in a way that really the term and the whole labeling it. But I think it will aid the whole process of organizing more in a networked way within the organization. So I think it really benefits changing that. And I think I recently reread it, but there was a post of Phaedra, I think a year or a year and a half ago, that she said, okay, it's really beneficial for organizational change, and I really agree with that.
Awesome.
And I think that helps a lot.
I think we agree with you very much too. And so it's awesome. And if you guys want to follow Guido, you can follow him on Twitter at it's Guido for us, in English, but Guido Guido JHSG on Twitter. Guido Helmerhorst, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it. And
Thank you
thank you
for
to all
having
your
me.
and thank you to all your colleagues at KLM for making it happen. Okay, you guys, a couple of notes for you. Next Tuesday, we have a special GamRev with Jane McGonigal. She's going to come. We're going to talk about her new book, which is coming up, Super Better, the book. I have an advanced copy of it. It's pretty amazing. You guys are going to love it. So that's next Tuesday. Make sure you're subscribed to Spreecast so you can see exactly when it's happening. Be sure to join us. And if you haven't already, you can also sign up and join, make a contribution to the upcoming Gamification by Design 2, which is my next book. And you can actually be a published author if your contributions are useful and worthwhile. And the link is there in your chat. In the meantime, everybody, I'm Gabe Zickerman. You can follow me on Twitter at gzickerm, and we'll see you next week on the Gamification Revolution. Thanks, everyone. Keep having fun.